Move by some senators to push for more information on the investigation. One of them is Republican Senator Ron Johnson, Wisconsin chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee. Sir, good morning to you. We're going to take our viewers back into this hearing. Not going to leave it for long, but what are you pushing for at the moment here, sir?
Good morning, Bill. Well, I'm working with Senator Grassley and also Senator Graham, and we want to ask the questions that, quite honestly, Robert Mueller did not ask, did not investigate, and that's exactly what was the predicate for this entire investigation. And what we're doing is we are releasing certain texts, certain emails that will hopefully prod, for example, in this case, the Inspector General of the intelligence community to take a look into potential leaks out of the intelligence community. And so we released one text from Peter Strzok to Lisa Page on December 15th, and it reads, "Think our sisters have begun leaking like mad. Scorned and worried and political, they're kicking into overdrive." Pretty interesting text. What are they worried about? What have they been leaking? And what are they kicking into overdrive? And then later, in April of 2017, an email that Strzok sent to his FBI colleagues, quote, "I'm beginning to think the agency got info a lot earlier than we thought and hasn't shared it completely with us. Might explain all these weird, seemingly incorrect leads all the media folks have. Would also highlight agency as a source of some leaks." So, Bill, there's so many unanswered questions, so many things that this raises as a concern that I think the American people have the right to know what was happening inside the Obama administration.
Let's get a little context here. I've heard the first one you read already. The second one appears to be new. What was going on within the investigation, either the FBI or the CIA around that time, that suggests that you're onto something, Senator?
Well, in the first text, news stories are starting to appear that there was some connection between Trump, his campaign, and Russia. That's the first time those news stories really appeared. So you might think that maybe the leaks has something to do with developing that story, that narrative. In the April emails, it refers specifically to a news story pointing to the fact that British intelligence were the first people that informed FBI about potential connection between Trump and Russia. So again, this is a narrative. This is a story that produced the Mueller special counsel investigation 18 months later, and we finally found out what Devin Nunes found out in the House Intelligence Committee over a year ago, that there was no collusion between Trump campaign and Russia.
So it is my understanding there's an investigation already underway into the very leaks that you're talking about, and that's what Michael Horowitz is doing right now. Are you contributing to what he's doing, or is this something separate from that, Senator?
No, this is something separate. So what Michael Horowitz is looking at is all the leaks that he found out during his Clinton email scandal investigation, all the leaks coming out of the FBI. What we're asking the Intelligence Community Inspector General is to investigate leaks apparently coming from one of the agencies. Again, we don't know which one. We're just asking those questions. But again, I think we need to take a look at that very seriously as well when you take a look at this entire narrative, this entire story that was spun up, that resulted in 18, 19 months of investigation, and it had really done a great deal of harm to this administration's ability to govern.
Okay, now a leak, if proven, is criminal, is it not, Senator?
They can be, they may not be, particularly if they're actually approved by higher-ups, which is something else the American public would want to know. So again, we want to know the source of these leaks. We want to know exactly, are there illegal leaks, or were they actually approved by higher-ups, potentially in some of these agencies, which would also be a pretty serious matter.
Okay, we have been watching this House hearing. I know it's outside of your jurisdiction, but give our viewers a sense about where this is headed, because it appears the ending for the story today is pretty obvious. You move the contempt vote out of committee. You wait for it later to be voted on the full House. We've seen contempt votes in the House against Eric Holder and Lois Lerner, and they essentially go nowhere. So what is today about when the White House exerts executive privilege over the Mueller report? At the end of the day, where are we, sir? Is it a stalemate, or is it more than that?
No, it's all politics. It is a stalemate. And I think this is what we are all warning the American public. If you put Democrats in charge of the House, it's not going to be about good governance. It's not going to be about moving our economy forward. It's all going to be about investigations and eventually talk about impeachment. And that's exactly what's happening in the House Judiciary Committee today. It's interesting. You mentioned Eric Holder. It took 255 days for a Republican House to finally get so exasperated with his stall tactics, they voted him in contempt. This is taking Chairman Nadler 19 days, I think is what the count is. So, again, a highly politicized House, not involved at all, not interested in governing and improving our economy, improving the lot of the American public. It's all about politics, trying to win the 2020 election.
Sir, thank you for your time. We will see. We'll stay in touch with you in your office.
Let me first just say that I expect that when the court does hear this challenge, if it comes to that, I expect that she will rule in favor of the constitutional separation and checks and balances in our oversight function. I really don't understand the arguments that have been articulated by my colleagues. And as I understand it, there have been three different reasons that have been suggested for opposing our effort to simply uphold our Article 1 responsibility as a separate and co-equal branch of government. One, that this whole thing is a politically inspired witch hunt. Nonsense. Two, they want to all of a sudden protect the reputational interests of innocent Americans. Nonsense. Three, this blanket assertion of executive privilege. Nonsense. Let's take all three. First of all, 17 different intelligence agencies have concluded that Russia interfered with our election, attacked our democracy for the sole purpose of artificially placing someone at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. They were successful. And that's also what the Mueller report shows. This is not a politically inspired witch hunt. I'm confused. Every single person at the helm of this investigation is a Republican. The person who initiated the investigation, former FBI Director James Comey, Republican. The FBI director who replaced him and presided over the investigation, Christopher Wray, Republican. The person who decided to appoint a special counsel to preside over the investigation and then monitored it at the helm of the Department of Justice, the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, Republican. The person who actually conducted the investigation, a war hero, a law enforcement professional, Bob Mueller, lifetime Republican. Who is the Attorney General going to investigate? The Republican Party? The notion that it's a politically inspired witch hunt is just one of 10,000 or more misrepresentations that have been spun out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. It's a shame that you choose to adopt it and parrot it. Second thing, reputational interests? Really? Many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle actually perpetrated a witch hunt as it relates to securing more than 800,000 documents from this very same Department of Justice without regard to the reputational interests of Americans who have served this country. You weren't concerned with the reputational interests of Hillary Clinton. In fact, the top Republican said that the sole objective was to undermine her, the former First Lady and Secretary of State. You weren't concerned with the reputational interests of Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. In fact, you embarrassed those two. They made mistakes, but you embarrassed those two. You weren't concerned with the reputational interests of Andy McCabe. So don't peddle that phony argument to us. This very same Department of Justice turned over 800,000 pages of documents, but they won't turn over a single page pursuant to a legitimately issued subpoena? And then you want to assert executive privilege. Are you kidding me? You can't assert executive privilege after the fact when the closest advisors to the president have already spoken to Team Mueller. Wait a second, let's try to go through this. White House counsel Don McCann talked to Mueller. There's no assertion of executive privilege. White House press secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders talked to Mueller. No assertion of executive privilege. White House Communications Director Hope Hicks talked to Mueller. There was no assertion of executive privilege. It's a phony argument. The House is a separate and co-equal branch of government. We're not a wholly owned